Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Desert. I am Julia Alberg-Burbank, your worship associate for today. As we begin today's service, we acknowledge that we gather on the unceded lands of the Agua Caliente Band of the Kuya people, and we commit to grow in our understanding and relationship with this land and with the people who inhabited it and nurtured it before our arrival. In this congregation, we strive to honor the inherent worth and dignity of every person. You are welcome, no matter your sexual orientation or gender identity, your age or your size, whether you're rich or poor. We welcome people of all races, religions, and cultures. We welcome you wherever you come from and whoever you love. We welcome all those who will learn and grow with us as we commit together to embrace the rich and beautiful diversity of the world. Our goal here is to build a community centered in justice, in compassion, and in love. We're glad you're here with us today, whether you are here in the sanctuary or at home online. Your presence is a blessing. We'd like to take a moment now to greet newcomers and visitors. If you're here for the first time and are comfortable, you're invited to stand or raise your hand, and an usher will come to you with a microphone. Right now, please just share your name and where you're from, and after the service, we can get to know you better at coffee hour. Yeah. Any takers today? All right. Well, welcome to you. We are glad you are here with us today. Now we will ring the Tibetan bowl and listen to our music for centering.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Ian Riddell, and as I say every week and mean every week, I have the honor and joy of serving this congregation as its minister. However you found us, however many times you've been with us in person or online, we welcome you. We're a congregation and a tradition that celebrates the richness and beauty of individual lives and commits to working together to weave a tapestry made stronger and more vibrant by our collaboration and by our sharing of our lives and our visions for a thriving future for all life. We strive together to build the beloved community of resilience, hope, and love in the face of fear and violence. We practice the opening of hearts, the working of hands, and the lifting of spirits in the service of love. Each of us brings a separate truth here. We bring the truth of our own life, our own story. We don't come as empty vessels, but rather we come as full people who have our own story and our own truth. We seek to add to our truths and add to our stories. This room is rich with truth, rich with experience. All manner of people are here, needy, joyful, frightened, anxious, bored. We all bring our own truth with us. May we all recognize the truth and the story in everyone's life, and may we hear and honor the truths that we all bring as we gather together. Together we have many truths. Together we have a story. Together we are a community. Will you rise in body or in spirit as we sing together our opening song, We Give Thanks? We'll sing it twice. We
Please join me in the words on the screen as Reverend Ian lights our chalice. May love be the spirit of this church. May the quest for truth be its sacrament, and service be its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, and to help one another in fellowship, this is our aspiration. Please join me as Ginger Hemingway lights our biopot candle. We light these candles in solidarity with Black, Indigenous, and other people of color as we journey together towards spiritual wholeness. May we, as a beloved community, work to dismantle racism and all forms of oppression. May we live out our principles so that justice, dignity, and equity for all prevail. This morning, I'm sharing a reading entitled Memorial Day by Army Chaplain Floyd Vernon Chandler. There are many stories about the beginning of Memorial Day. The first official observance was on May 30th, 1868, when flowers were placed on the graves of Union and Confederate soldiers at Arlington National Cemetery. Since World War I, Memorial Day has been commemorated as a day to honor all men and women who have died while serving in our nation's military. On Memorial Day, our nation pauses to express its appreciation to those who have served and who continue to serve in our nation's armed forces. On Memorial Day, we remember our comrades in uniform whom we have loved and lost in service to our nation. We express gratitude for their lives and their sacrifices, even as we risk our own. On Memorial Day, no matter our feelings about war, we remember the sacrifices made. May we honor the lives of those who have died, and may we reach out in love to our living veterans and their families, extending the olive branch of acceptance and respect as our faith calls us to each and every day. War is a horror. May we never use Memorial Day as a time to glorify militarism or the killing and destructiveness of this human aberration we call war. We yearn for peace, and we pray for the day when nations pursue understanding over violence and resolving disputes.
So I invite you, please, to join me in a time of prayer and contemplation. Spirit of life, fire of love, source of our broken but still shining hearts, we gather today in community. We gather today in the face of a world full of beauty and full of pain. A world that has fierce hope and also deep worry. We gather together today at this time of year that we set aside to remember the loss of life from war, specifically the loss of life of those service members who serve in our nation's military. However they feel, however we feel about the wars and the conflict we ask them to engage in, we pause today to remember with gratitude, with honor, and with respect those who have lost their lives in the service of this country. We hold them in our hearts. We are sorrowful at the ending of their lives too soon. We hold also in our hearts their families, their neighbors, their community, who have lost them to war as well. We hold in our hearts all of those veterans who have come home alive from war, from conflict, all of those who have served, even if not in conflict. We hold in our hearts all of those people and their families as they grapple with the reality of their service, the reality of civilian life, and the reality of a world that continues to be warmongering, that continues to be violent. We hold all of them in our hearts. And we hold in our hearts the innocent victims of war today as well. Those families, those civilians caught in the face of conflict, caught in the face of violence, whose worlds are upended, whose lives are cut short, whose survival is in question because of the violence that surrounds them, the violence they have no control over. Hold them in our hearts. And we hold in our hearts today our leaders, those who make the decisions, those who decide to enter into conflict, into warfare. May their hearts remember love. May their hearts remember peace. May they always work, may we always work toward a world of peace, of trust, of hope, and of love. May we learn how to respond with peace to violence. May we learn how to build a world that is safe for our children. May we learn how to build a world that is peaceful and hopeful and just. With the weight of these hopes, the weight of this gratitude in our hearts, we pause in silence together. May all beings know peace. May all beings know an end to suffering. May all beings know love. Will you join your voices together, friends, as we sing our hymns for meditation, Spirit of Life, Fuente de Amor. In a prayer for Memorial Day, the Reverend Barbara Peskin writes, "Spirit of life, whom we have called by many names in thanksgiving and in anguish, bless the poets and those who mourn. Send peace for the soldiers who did not make the wars, but whose lives were consumed by them. Let strong trees grow above graves far from home. Breathe through the arms of their branches. The earth will swallow your tears while the dead sing no more, never again. Remember me." I will be using some of Reverend Barbara's words tomorrow as I give the invocation at the Memorial Day gathering at Forest Lawn Mortuary. I know that then I'll be surrounded by flags and pomp. But in my mind and in my heart, as I prepare for tomorrow, as I was preparing for today, I could only see a small group of young, uncertain faces in my mind, and I want to tell you a little bit about them. When I was in seminary, one of my classmates, now the Reverend David Pyle, invited me to take part in an interesting ministry in my second year. Before seminary, he had served in the military as an intelligence analyst, especially during the conflict in the Balkans. He's a powerfully smart guy and a really grounded minister, and though he may not know it, he's someone I continue to look up to and learn from. Now, north of Chicago, in Lake County, Illinois, on the shore of Lake Michigan, is the Great Lakes Naval Station. It is now the location of the Navy's only recruit training program, what some of the other services call boot camp. About 40,000 recruits go through Great Lakes each year. It's functionally a small city. Now, the recruits are wildly diverse in where they come from, in their culture and ethnic backgrounds, their economic backgrounds, and of course, in the religious traditions and practices that they call theirs. Now, the Navy, like other branches of the service, has chaplains, and there are Unitarian Universalist military chaplains. I don't know if you knew that, but there are. David is one of them. And every week, chaplains and some civilian clergy provided religious services for thousands of recruits. My friend David and a couple of other seminarians who had served in the military had created a weekly Unitarian Universalist service on base that they offered in partnership with the congregation at Evanston, Illinois, the congregation actually that the Reverend Barbara Peskin served at the time, and a few of us Meadville students. Many of the Christian religious services, Episcopalian, Catholic, Methodist, Evangelical, had massive rooms for the hundreds and hundreds of attendees at those services. We Unitarian Universalists shared a small room with the Buddhist group, which met immediately after we did on Sunday mornings. Now, there were not a huge number of Unitarian Universalist naval recruits who came to our services. That had a lot to do with how many UUs there are compared to all those Episcopalians and Catholics and Methodists and Evangelicals and Jews and Muslims. But by word of mouth, it seemed, we often had a nice number of folks. We had atheists and agnostics and pagans, and usually several folks who adhere to the Asatru faith, which is a modern recreation of the worship of Norse gods and goddesses in a way that is loving and not at all focused on white supremacy. It was a mixed bunch of people. Often we had recruits who were having trouble or had been rejected by the Navy part of the way through boot camp or chose not to go forward into the service. But the way things were set up, if that was the case, if you were, I'm hesitating to say kicked out, but if it didn't work for you or for the Navy with you, you actually had to stay on base for the remainder of the full training time. So there were some folks in some conflicted turmoil in the room too. Now, the service that we offered was deeply focused on the recruits as individuals, on individual identity, moral grounding, not because we were rejecting interdependence, which we don't do, of course, as Unitarian Universalists, but because boot camp was all about building service members who could be cohesive parts of their unit. Conformity and uniformity were important. And we wanted to remind the recruits that their own self, their own moral judgments were crucial and healthy, that we are all unique and worthy even as we are woven together in interdependent webs. Now, the program was not universally appreciated at our seminary. One of the professors, a staunch and outspoken pacifist, questioning the morality of supporting the military process in any way at all. But I remember the look on the faces of the young people who participated in the service, their need for something deeper, not at all different from our own need. Even for those who were thriving as they began their service in the Navy, the need for grounding and inspiration as they began their journey into the larger world and work they were training for. And when you walk through the large building that holds the chapels and worship spaces on base, you see little racks of pamphlets and small books everywhere. Service members, my understanding is, are permitted to carry small things with them, and many denominations have created literature in forms that were easy to carry: prayer books, devotionals, little Bibles, little Qurans. And at that time, there wasn't really any Unitarian Universalist focused material, though. But in 2010, the UA published a small blue book called Bless All Who Serve: Sources of Hope, Courage, and Faith for Military Personnel and Their Families. This little book here, which contains prayers and readings and little reflections and essays and hymns. In the introduction to the book, the editors Matthew and Gail Tiddle, both veterans, wrote, "Whether you are a soldier, a sailor, an airman, a Marine, or simply someone who loves and supports a member of the military, we offer you this small collection of readings in recognition of your service. You will find here a wide variety of selections from many faith traditions and religious perspectives that will comfort, challenge, and inspire, whether in the field or on front lines, at sea or on base, at home or in the chapel. Bless All Who Serve is meant to be just that, a blessing to all soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, past, present, and future, and their family." The prayer I quoted a little while ago from Reverend Barbara is included in this collection. Our closing hymn is included in this collection as well. And tomorrow is Memorial Day, as Julia shared earlier in a reading that comes directly from this little blue book. Memorial Day is a day when we pause to express our appreciation to those who have served and who continue to serve in our nation's armed forces. And when I think on this day, it is the faces of those cadets that come to my mind, those recruits. Their youth, their hesitancy paired with certainty. They would all be in their late 30s now. Perhaps some of them are still in the Navy. Perhaps some have finished their service and are living in civilian life. And it's very possible that some of them have died in the service of our nation. And so on this Memorial Day, I'm thinking about what would really be a meaningful gratitude. What would be a meaningful honoring of that service, that sacrifice? How do we show respect? Barbara Peskin's prayer continues. For the wounded ones and those who receive them back, let there be somebody ready when the memories come, when the scars pull and the buried metal moves, and forgiveness for those of us who were not there for our ignorance. We are called to honor those who serve by doing everything we can to care for them and their families when they return. Readjustment to life outside the service can be bumpy, I know. And I know that vets are provided a wide range of services to help them reintegrate into civilian society. But being in the service is often a very dangerous job to have. That doesn't seem like a strange thing to say. Even for those folks not in direct combat, service members return from duty with medical and mental wounds and conditions that are different from the general population and sometimes unseen by most of their neighbors and fellow citizens. Chemical exposure, wounds from artillery or IEDs or accidents, PTSD, and many other maladies that often come with service to the military, that often we are unwilling as a society to see. One of the ways we show our returning veterans and their families that we are serious about being grateful for their service is funding and offering the Veterans a fair health system. And the VA Choice and Quality Employment Act of 2017 mandates that the Veterans Affairs Office of Inspector General survey and study every VHA medical center every year to determine which jobs are in those facilities, both clinical and non-clinical staff, have the most severe staff shortages, because like every medical facility in the country, I think, there are staffing shortages. The report for 2023 highlighted that there were 3,118 severe occupational staff shortages across 282 occupations, a significantly higher number than in a few years prior. Every facility they surveyed reported at least one shortage, and also 88% of facilities reported severe shortages for medical officers, and 92% reported severe shortages for nurses. The Undersecretary for Health of our country responded to the initial report by sharing that, quote, having a dedicated and fully staffed workforce is essential to positive patient outcomes in the Veterans Health Administration. He continued to say that though the VA was regularly rated higher by its patients than private health care, work needed to be done to better staff and resource VA facilities. He shared that many of the positions that were facing shortages were difficult to fill because of low available workforce and significant competition from the private sector, which often paid better. One area of care for veterans that has often been in the spotlight in the media lately is mental health, with several tragic stories involving the death by suicide of veterans who may have been neglected or inconsistently cared for by the VA's clinics. You only need a quick Google search to find many articles investigating this situation. I'm not going to run them all down for you now, but I do encourage you to go and take a look. Especially ProPublica articles are very, I was going to say excellent, and they are excellent. They're a little disheartening. And the staffing shortages I mentioned earlier are making it hard on the Veterans Administration to respond well to what the U.S. Government Accountability Office calls a, quote, growing demand for mental health services, including assessing and treating veterans with mild to moderate symptoms and conditions like anxiety or depression. A 2022 GAO study insisted that the VHA step up its efforts to better staff mental health roles so that its facilities have, quote, mental health providers, such as psychologists, psychiatrists, and social workers, available within primary care settings to work collaboratively and share responsibly with primary care providers to, one, assess and treat veterans with mental health symptoms and conditions, such as anxiety or depression, and two, to follow up with those veterans to monitor their symptoms and adherence to medications and provide education and referral services. The highest priority is to prevent suicide, as veterans are 1.5 times more likely than the general population to die by suicide. Another GAO report states that the number of veterans receiving mental health care from the Department of Veterans Affairs increased 90% from 2006 to 2019. The budget also increased significantly, but the VA is predicting a further 32% increase in need for care over the next decade. Now, it's not Veterans Day today, I know. It is the time of year we set aside to intentionally honor the memory of those who have died in the service of this country, a solemn day, a day grounded in sorrow and in gratitude. But I think that honoring the service of those who perished requires of us more than prayers and parades, though those are powerfully important. I think we live out our honoring of the fallen by making better and more humane and loving decisions about how we put our military forces to use and how we treat those who return from that service. And as we use the language of soldiers and sailors and Marines and others fighting for our freedoms, we need to be vigilant here at home about how we protect those freedoms here that we send them off to fight for, as we say. How are we safeguarding and protecting a just and free and loving society? Barbara Peskin concludes her prayer, and us, veterans in a forest of 1,000 fallen promises, let new leaves of protest grow on our stumps. Give us the courage to answer the cry of humanity's pain, and with our bare hands, out of full hearts, with all of our intelligence, let us create the peace. With the goal of peace in our hearts, with the memory of those who have served that goal and are no longer with us in our hearts, with the faces and voices of those young recruits I know in my heart, let us join our hands and our hearts and our spirits in the work of transformation and love and peace. May it be so. Now, I said our closing song was one of the songs included in this little blue book. It's called Vine and Fig Tree, and it's a two-part song, a two-part round. And I'm going to teach you each of the parts. You may know this, but if you don't, I'm going to teach you each of the parts. We're going to sing them, and then we're going to try and sing them with each other and see how we do. I think you'll be good at it. Can I have the key, Malcolm, please? So I'll sing the first line goes like this. And everyone neath a vine and fig tree will live in peace and not afraid. Listen again. And everyone neath a vine and fig tree will live in peace and not afraid. And everyone neath a vine and fig tree shall live in peace and not afraid. Once more. And everyone neath a vine and fig tree shall live in peace and not afraid. Second part goes like this. And into plowshares beat their swords, nations shall learn war no more. And into plowshares turn their swords, nations shall learn war no again. And into plowshares turn their swords, nations shall learn war no more. And into plowshares turn their swords, nations shall learn war no more. And everyone neath the vine and fig tree shall live in peace and unafraid. And everyone neath the vine and fig tree shall live in peace and unafraid. Okay, let's stop there for a second. Now, we're going to sing it like this. We're going to go faster. And what we're going to do is we're going to sing the first line twice, the second line twice, and then I'm going to invite this side of the room to sing the first line over and over again, and this side of the room to sing the second line over and over again until we're done. Does that make sense? So we'll sing the first line twice, second line twice, and go for it. You can do it. I know you can. I've sung this with 4-year-olds at church camp. You can do it. And everyone neath a vine and fig tree shall live in peace and unafraid. And everyone neath a vine and fig tree shall live in peace and unafraid. And into plowshares turn their swords, nations shall learn war no more. And into plowshares turn their swords, nations shall learn war no more. And everyone into plowshares turn their swords, nations shall
have one bit of congregational news today. Here in the sanctuary from 1 to 2:30 on Friday, May 31st, so this Friday, Rabbi Jules King and Reverend Ian will be hosting a community gathering. The description says, "Are you feeling anxiety as we head toward a momentous election? Are you worried about the future of our democracy? We are gathering our two communities, DOS and UUCOD, for a time of reflection and sharing and support in this trying time for our nation. Join us in community and resilience and love." And that is Friday, the 31st, from 1 to 2:30, right here in the sanctuary. Please join me as Reverend Ian extinguishes the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
I close with the words again of Army Chaplain Floyd Vernon Chandler. On Memorial Day, no matter our feelings about war, we remember the sacrifices made. May we honor the lives of those who have died, and may we reach out in love to our living veterans and their families, extending the olive branch of acceptance and respect as our faith calls us to each and every day. Go in peace, dear ones, to love and serve the world.